Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Everything You Want to Know About the Silva Method. We've been doing this, Amy Schneider and myself, Amy from Atlanta, for a little over a year because we both have noticed this beautiful work of art that Jose Silva spent 22 years researching and started offering to the public at 66. We now call it the Silva Method Immersion Experience of Life and Intuition System. Way back when, we called it the basic lecture. But anyway, it's an incredible coursework, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, or there's a lot of shortcuts, abbreviated on video, whatever, and so on. And with due respect, we want to go in there and offer you so that you can get the best value. This is about transformation. This is about integrating in such a way that you get value that helps to change your life. And excuse me, I was just making a correction on the screen for myself. So today our topic is, what would it look like if you were waking up in the morning and saying, yes, another day, because you feel you're living a purpose-driven life? Now, it may not be quite that exaggerated, but you get where I'm coming from. So let me turn over to Amy. Amy, how about you? In your experience, maybe working with your students, what would it be like? What does it look like to be on purpose in your life?
So for me, I've been diving into this quite a bit. And in our session of connection to purpose, what came up for me in doing some research is really just, and I really resonate with it. It really sits with my values. And that's just it. To not only be doing what you want to do, but to also be who you want to be. That allowing that authentic self to come forward, and all of those parts of you that you love and that people may comment on. Oh, you make me feel this way. You bring this to my life. Or just, this brings me joy when I am doing this, when I am having this conversation, when I am going to this place. All of it is connected to our purpose. And if it lights you up and if it's in alignment with your values, you're on purpose. If you feel like you're just in flow.
That's interesting. As you were saying that, I'm reminded, and perhaps you guys have heard this before, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And let's understand, that doesn't mean you don't expend energy and you don't need rest and holidays. It just simply means you tolerate more. You're more committed in your actions, in your behavior, and you find yourself, when you're on purpose, eager to serve, eager to learn more, eager to improve and to excel and to strive for excellence, not perfection, but excellence.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Amy, what you're saying. I think it's important, if we're going to live a purpose-driven life, that our values are clear about who's important to us, what's important to us, what do we value, what are those character traits, etc., that we all value, and they need to be in alignment with our goals.
Yeah.
So I will just add another aspect, contribution. It's interesting throughout history how very often some of the most, if we call them successful people who have contributed to breakthroughs in medicine, in science, in technology, in everyday living, from appliances to telecommunications, understanding relationships. When you read their story and you read their biographies, they began with a dream to make a difference, to contribute. They saw a problem. They identified a problem, a challenge that people were having. They said, I can figure that out. How can we help them? And then, if it starts that way, for those of you who want to scale up, and those of you who want to earn more and thrive, that's really the key. Sure, have a number in mind, how much you want to earn. The key really is, though, what's the contribution that you want to make? How do you want to serve? What problem do you want to solve so that the masses and the more people who can benefit from that, and then you learn how to monetize it, that's when you thrive. And that's all these people. Jose is a great example, Jose Silva. He began with an act of love to help his children learn faster and easier so that they get through school because back then they were not completing school. And he knew if they had good education, they'd be more likely to have a more fulfilling life.
Yep.
You went ahead?
I do. I think, too, one of the things that I appreciate most about Jose Silva is exactly what you just said. He started with an act of love, and also he was curious. He was so curious in mind, where he was always asking questions. What else? What else? How could this relate to this? And going down different paths. And I think that when we are on purpose, we are more curious. How else can I serve with what it is I'm doing? How else can I present the material? Where else can I go with it? And in being curious and in figuring out those answers, it also helps us that when we hit up against those roadblocks or those speed bumps in the right direction, exactly what you mentioned before, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have challenging days or that it's all going to be easy. But what it does mean is that you are more committed to it because it's important to you, it's connected to you. And so you're more likely to stick with it, to figure it out because you know that there's something there. And ultimately, it's an intuitive process of just a knowing, okay, I'm going in the right direction, or however else your intuition speaks to you, right? So it's just, I feel like it is a whole and complete process when we are living on purpose.
Interesting. A lot of thought there. Uh, Just thinking, I think we could say the same thing with relationships. Too often when people are looking for a forever husband, forever wife, or however you want to put it, forever partner,
Yeah.
too often we get distracted by gimme, what is it I want? What are my needs? Which of course is important.
Yes.
And we find that it seems to work so much better when we think of what do I bring to the game? Why would anyone want to have a relationship with me? To me, that's being on purpose. That's being of service. That's what they call servant leadership, if you will, or contributing. And it's interesting, this is fairly new. In 2007, when we had, as I like to call it, the Renaissance, and we upgraded what we used to call the basic lecture series, still that Jose's research, still the same program, but we took some of his advanced material, and this is one of them. It's a beautiful exercise that gets so many accolades from people, connection to purpose, and how we can connect consciously with Source, God, higher intelligence, your authentic self, that you want to call it. Because when we do, we're more likely to figure that out and live a purpose-driven life rather than being distracted by gimme and being distracted by that badge of honor. Hey, people say, hey, Amy, are you busy? And then if she says yes, oh, as long as you're busy, like a badge of honor. Instead, ask them, are you productively busy getting what you want? Guaranteed it'll
Yes,
stop them in their tracks.
it
And
will.
that
It
and that's a distraction, isn't it, from being on purpose? Or not just doom scrolling, but those we're so busy having and doing rather than just being
Yeah.
and allowing ourselves to consciously connect with our authentic self. We can go back thousands of years ago in spiritual teachings and ideologies and so on. It's not, it's just a matter of being, as Amy, you said earlier, I agree, true to ourselves and who we are.
Absolutely. I had recently, I actually show this in my classes, and I may have brought this up in an earlier episode, but this is the piece where I show it, where there was a graduate of North Carolina State University, and she had gone through an accident in softball. She played softball for the school and had a traumatic brain injury, and she had to really work back for a really long time. And it meant that she could no longer play softball. It meant a whole host of things where her life took a different direction. And how she built herself back and really came back was not focusing on her, but focusing on her support system around her, where she started to look at her friends and her family members and really asked, what do they contribute to my life? What do they contribute to the world? And this is why I love them. This is why they're important to them. And I really feel like it's that ultimate gratitude practice. And I think it's a good exercise for all of us, where when we are feeling that emptiness of what's more, or that, okay, I know I'm doing, but I really want to go towards something more meaningful, looking at the world around you and asking, what is the world providing not only to me, but to others, whether that be a friend, a family member, or a service, or a place, or whatever it may be, because then you actually get in touch with who you are at your core.
Interesting. I get we could go on and on with this, couldn't we?
You can.
Because based on what you were saying, seems to me that when we're on purpose, let's say, and we're striving to make a contribution, how can I serve better? Although it's important, the money, the finances, but it's in the background. It's secondary. We're not striving. That's not the first priority. That comes as a result of the more people we help, the more people we serve with that. But I'd like to share a story that was new to me. I'd never heard this. Historically speaking, I think we all know about the Wright Brothers, Kitty Hawk, and the first flight. They were dead broke, bicycle repairmen who had this dream that one day man will fly flying machines. And the consensus of opinion during that time was, if man was supposed to fly, he'd have wings. You're crazy. No future in it, right? And the Wright brothers, every time they had an accident, they crashed, they had to go repair a bunch of bikes and take spare parts. And that's how they went on. What I'd never heard, I was doing some reading, and there was a historian commenting about that time. And he brought up a name that I knew, but I really didn't pay attention. Samuel Pierpont Langley. Langley Air Force.
Yeah.
Base. It's named after him. He was, during that same time, a very prominent industrialist, very prominent scientist. He was affiliated with the Smithsonian. He's very well respected. And I didn't know he had, from the U.S. Defense Department, it was either $25,000 or $50,000, which back then was a lot, grant to work on flight. And the people of the day, his colleagues, say, stick to what you know, Mr. Langley. There's no future in that. But what the historian said, I know it sounds a little judgy. He said when the Wright brothers succeeded and had the first flight, they got all the accolades, all the attention, and Mr. Langley dropped out. And the historian said, I wonder if he was on purpose, if he was on mission, which also shows up. People who are living a purpose-driven life feel like they have a mission, something to accomplish. If he truly had that, he would have stayed with it and maybe integrated, collaborated with the Wright brothers, and took his huge resources and expedited the progress made in flight. But he dropped out. And I found that interesting, in that, like, what drives us, because even, unfortunately, when there's a horrible accident or somebody's a dear one is killed by a drunk driver, or there's a mass shooting, how very often that family takes on a purpose of doing things to raise the awareness so that stuff like this never happens again. They're on mission. They have a reason for being. And it's just so important. And I love the exercise to get connection to purpose and during the immersion. But I want to just clarify, we don't have the time to go in detail. It's not only about an hour between the exercise and the preparing, but all for the first 2 days we're preparing for it. For 3 days, actually, activating our intuition in such a way and developing some points of reference so that we know what's the difference that made the difference. And one of the things we do is, at level, in our meditation, our dynamic meditation, ask a series of questions to our higher self, if you will, to source, to guide us, to make some decisions. And it really can be profound for people. and it's a work in progress that we can work with. But, and I'll let you talk a moment, Amy. I'm on a roll.
You are.
I just wanted to add a takeaway. But I would say one thing that you could do now, if you're not doing this already, is just sit back and reflect quietly. It helps to close your eyes. If you're a meditator, do it in your meditation. If you're not, just close your eyes, a couple of deep breaths, few deep breaths, and reflect on ask yourself, what would my life be like if my best self were to emerge? Or what would my life be like if I were living a purpose-driven life? What would I feel like? How would I be acting? What would people be saying to me, or what would people be saying about me with respect to that? You don't have to define it specifically like in a business, a movement, whatever, but you'd be surprised when you think like that and you just let your creative imagination run wild. You'll come up with ideas. That's what it takes, because if you keep doing what you've been doing and thinking the way you've been thinking, you're going to get the same results and you're not going to change. And the only way that you and I can realize our potential, to realize our value, our purpose, if you will, is to allow our creative imagination to do its thing. So that's a takeaway you could take to the bank. It'll make a big difference. I'd love to hear from you.
So when we're growing, we're always growing, but that survival security part of our brain always loves to be safe and secure. So when we're growing and learning new things and getting in touch with really who we are, or really feeling maybe things for the first time that we haven't felt in a long time, yes, this is it. And we go to follow the path. And then we have those thoughts that are really there. Our brain is there to keep us safe. That is when it is the uncomfortable piece, the uncomfortable part of growth, where we really have to realize, okay, it's now time to get out of the seat that I have been sitting in and go choose another one. And to your point, when we change, then the things that we look at change. And if we keep looking at them the same way, they're always going to stay the same. And by looking at things from different perspectives, by being curious, when you're curious, you've got nothing to lose. It's like throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks, and being playful and open. And when we are that way, then that's when that information starts coming in, because we're relaxed, we're having fun, which is another way to really activate our intuition. And by activating that, we truly do have that connection to who we are at our core, to our higher self. So finding ways, if you are just on this path to self-growth, and finding those ways to embrace being uncomfortable, but in a more comfortable environment. And the more times you have with, oh, okay, I embrace being uncomfortable, I took a leap of faith, it worked out, the more times you have, the more comfortable you get with that growth process.
Very well put. Very well put. And I'm smiling here and laughing. I like your metaphor, and I don't. Throwing spaghetti against the wall. What a waste of good spaghetti. Oh my God. Oh my God.
I was embracing my inner child.
Now, at least you didn't say throwing fusilli. Fusilli, it's a family favorite.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm talking the real deal, not what many restaurants serve. Little Pete.
I love
Real
it.
fusilli is about this long.
Yes.
And the curl, fabulous. So any other quick parting thoughts, Amy, before we sign off that you might have?
My quick parting thought is that our authentic self of who we are meant to be is always emerging, and it's always there, always. And you always have the capability to just be in touch with it. And ultimately, just as you said before, Ken, that a very quick way to do that is to get into a place where you can relax, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and ask some questions. Be curious, be open. And another way is to come into our class and learn a structured way that you can apply it as well.
Yeah, it's always much easier when you have a professional guiding with respect to that. Excellent. I had a thought. It left me about this with that. But I would say living a life of purpose is so important. And when you are, and when you're doing that, you'll have more energy, more vitality with that. And the invitation is to think of it more about serving, contributing. I have a saying I like to say, do good, make your contribution, make a difference, have lots of fun while you're doing it, and thrive. And you listeners, my parting thought is thank you so much for staying to the end. It says a lot about you. Thank you for being here. And thank you for sharing this with family and friends who you know could use this. Maybe this could be a beginning for them, a start to just consider this, because the more we start thinking about contributing and serving and helping, the more likely we are to address and solve so many of the problems that we're all facing on this beautiful planet that we live in. So again, it's been wonderful, Amy. Amy, as you know, Schneider, she teaches in Atlanta, Northwestern North Carolina. I teach in Chicago and Farmington, and it'll be great to see you one day in person in one of our immersions.
Yes.
So until the next time, take care. Stay tuned for more.